There have been more casualties in the struggling retail sector this week, with big names like JB Hi-Fi, Kathmandu and Billabong taking tumbles on the stock market. Despite unprecedented challenges, some businesses are staging a comeback, adapting to the radically changing demands of their customers. Deborah Cornwall reports.
An Ultra Matrix. Wow. So what would you like for Christmas?
A man.
It's the annual boom time for retailers. But while the stores are jammed with last-minute shoppers, in the post-GFC world, nothing is quite as it was before.
With everything going up except our wages, it's kind of hard to splurge this year.
The rise and rise of online shopping, the high Australian dollar, and now the global shakeout from Europe has crippled many retailers, big and small.
I think consumers have become a lot more savvy and relatively ruthless in kind of saying, if I can find the same thing and I have to wait no more than a couple more days, then I'll definitely take the cheaper option.
In the past week alone, some of the country's retail giants have taken a big hit on the stock market. And according to Jerry Harvey, the founder of Australia's biggest electrical retailer, there's more carnage to come.
I can tell you it's hard to find a retailer in Australia that's not in some form of financial trouble.
Harvey Norman launched its own fight-back strategy yesterday, announcing a new website business which will ship tax-free computer games direct to Australia from Ireland.
Well, it's a real big game changer because over the last 12 months you've seen the rise and rise of overseas internet sites. We're not talking about local Australian sites, we're talking about retailers overseas gaining a bigger share day by day of the market. You can't expect us to sit here and cop a hiding from overseas retailers.
Mr. Harvey says the move would mean certain job losses, but that was inevitable anyway, as Australian businesses continued to be placed in the impossible position of trying to compete with cheap online imports, which were now forcing stores to slash prices so low it was unsustainable.
The retail industry in Australia employs 1.2 million people. It's the biggest employer of people in Australia. So by going offshore, we're going to end up losing a lot of Australian jobs. Now, the result, if we lose, say, 10% of Australian jobs in retail, that would be 100,000 people. That would transform into 500,000 people through the domino effect.
Virtual shopping has hit every sector, but perhaps none so hard as the notoriously fragile fashion industry.
Look, the fabric in this is absolutely amazing. You know, it's a cut velvet. The online phenomenon really started to kick hard about 2 years ago, and in particular in the last 18 months. You know, this amazing neckband. And what we've discovered then is people will blatantly walk into the store, use it as a fitting room, try on what they want, and then very discreetly make a note to themselves and then go home and shop the world until they can find it for $50 less or $200 less.
For 2 decades, fashion maven Belinda Sepper has paved the way in high-end fashion retail across the country. But that didn't spare her going into voluntary administration.
Unfortunately, last year, I think it was in about May last year when sales seriously tanked. They really tanked. And it wasn't just us, I mean, it was across the board. It was the worst retail conditions, I think, in 50 years.
Belinda Sepper says to survive, she's had to radically restructure the business. Some of her stores have been shut down and a web shop is set to be launched next month. But online creep, she says, still only ever accounted for 10 to 15% of her business fall-off.
It's too easy to blame all the economic conditions that we're all facing. We're all facing the same conditions. Retail is really like a love affair. You have to bind yourself to the customers. You have to bind them on very gently, include them in your world.
Retail analyst Damien Tampling agrees most businesses have been too ready to blame the brutal economic conditions, but what they really needed to do was adapt to a whole new landscape in retail.
I think there is a shift. Consumers used to absolutely vote with their feet in terms of wanting to go into a store to get the customer service, to get the knowledge within the sales assistants, repertoire, but less and less that's the case.
He says Harvey Norman's offshore venture may move more product, but the real future for retailers lies with offering the right mix of products, far better service and an online presence.
In the US, there's some really interesting examples coming up where you can go into a fashion retailer shop, you can buy a blouse in that store for $70 there and then and take it with you, or you can actually buy it for 25% cheaper but have it delivered to you 3 days later. So they're trying to mix the two kind of advantages of those models together into one.
I want an iPad. I want a watch.
With so much at stake, all most retailers will be hoping for this Christmas is to still be around same time next year.
Deborah Cornwall reporting.